All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Episode 10, double digits. Episode 10 of Over the Head podcast with myself, Rat, and Kyle Hartzell. Excited, great episode today. So we're going to jump right in here right off the bat with newly minted Redwoods head coach Anthony Kelly is going to join the podcast for a conversation. So really excited to talk about that. We've previewed that a little bit. We'll spend probably most of the time today with Coach Train, and then we will quickly just touch on some other PLL news. I think some trades, some free agent signing, stuff like that. And then we'll talk about college lacrosse and some big games this weekend, Q's, UNC, all the normal topics. Who are the frauds, who aren't? So that's what's in store, but let's dive right in. All right, Kyle, let's bring in new head coach of the Redwoods Lacrosse Club, Anthony Kelly.
Let's get it. There he is.
What's up, boys?
Coach Kelly, the conversation right off the bat was, are we allowed to call you Train anymore, or is it like a doctor, or it's formal now? Is it Coach Train? Is it Coach Kelly? What's the proper nomenclature?
You guys have both known me long enough to know that there's nothing needs to be too formal here.
Train. So just quick background on Anthony Kelly here, right? 10-year professional. Got your career started with the Los Angeles Riptide? 12
years.
Sorry. 2006 was your first year, correct, with the LA Riptide?
That's correct.
LA Riptide. Ohio native, St. Ignatius High School, Cleveland, Ohio.
That's right.
And now new Redwoods head coach. How's it feel, man?
It's great, man. It's exciting. It's been an exciting couple weeks. Obviously, a lot going on to get to this point, and just thrilled to have the opportunity. I'm excited for the challenge, excited to get back into the pro league and, be around the guys and just share some knowledge, man.
Yeah. And Train, I know, man, you've been we've been talking, it's probably been 2-3 years. You've been trying to get your foot in the door somewhere in the PLL, and you've been at it for a long time. And it's kind of been, on both sides, but for myself, and I'm sure you've, a little bit of frustration to not get your name called, through this whole interview process you go through. I think it was, the Water Dogs at one point and Chaos. And, but man, where did this hunger come from? The motivation to get back to, obviously you played for such a long time, but man, where did this motivation, this hunger come from to get into the PLL as a coach and obviously head coach?
Yeah, I mean, not like I expect anything. It's not like I expect to be the guy raising my hand on the first go around and expect to get what I want, but it's exciting to even be considered for something like this. And, obviously to your point, once I retired, I've always kind of had the hunger to get back into the game at the professional level. And since that time, I've been coaching for 20 plus years and doing it full time with my club. I've had some college experience, obviously my playing experience of being around the game, being around great coaches. I've always had that desire just to dive back in. And, now that I've had a little time away from the game, it allowed me to focus on my family and focus on my businesses and kind of get things where I wanted it to get to. And now I feel like I'm at a great point to just to be able to, really dive back into the PLL. And, obviously I was in the MLL days, so it's going to be a new experience for me. But, it's also the same, getting back in there and, getting my feet wet. And to your point, yeah, I mean, I was hungry when the opportunity opened up for the Water Dogs. Obviously that didn't work out. They got a great pick with Bill Tierney. Obviously Bill Tierney's Bill Tierney. And yeah. When he's going for a job, he's probably going to get it. And, there's no shame there. And, same thing with the Chaos job. Obviously Roy is a friend of mine. We competed, we were teammates over the years. Roy's great, and I think he's going to be awesome with that group. So, when my name got called for an opportunity here with the Redwoods, I couldn't have been more excited. And, I think it's funny how things work out sometimes with, you mentioned LA. I started my career in California, end up coming back here for my first opportunity as a coach, going to the California team, which is pretty cool to go full circle, kind of make that full connection again. I feel like it means a little more that way. Great life experiences that I had out there. Obviously the team will be traveling, but we'll have a great weekend out there. And, really, I see a lot of correlation between this team and that team that I was on, back in LA. A lot of young guys, a lot of hungry guys, and a lot of guys with a lot to prove. And, I love that. And, not getting the result I wanted for those first 2 times makes me even more motivated and hungry to succeed here with this group.
So, Train, you mentioned there, played with and against Coach Colsey. I was thinking, is there anybody on this Redwoods roster that you played with? I mean, I know you were on 2016, the Atlanta Blaze, Connor Kelly might have been a rookie that season. Have you looked at that? Do you have any former teammates?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you say that. There's not a whole lot of guys left. E-Law is a guy that I played with in Denver, but Wes Berg was actually a rookie when I was in Denver. So he came on my last year in Denver. He came on and was part of the team, so I got to know Wes a little bit. So obviously I'm excited to have the opportunity to get back with him, and he and I caught up on the phone, which was great after I got the job.
Awesome.
Yeah. And Train, with obviously the thing that's new here that me and Scott have been kind of back and forth on. We talked to Spencer last week a little bit about the GM role, but how are you envisioning this thing with the new general manager Joe Splina working? You guys working together to build a championship roster. How do you envision that?
And for context, you beat Joe Splina in a championship game. Do I have that right or no? Did you ever beat the Lizards to win a championship, or maybe at least in a semifinals?
So 2014, we beat the Lizards in overtime at Denver, at what is it, DU, right?
Yeah,
Denver University.
Yeah, I remember that game.
That was at DU in overtime, on a torn Achilles, by the way, to go on to the championship where we beat Rochester in Atlanta, Rat, down in your hood.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe I was thinking that was the championship game. So, yeah, and sorry, I hijacked that, but very curious about that working relationship and the process. Did you get hired by Paul and Mike, and then it's a blind date? Here's Joe, here's Train. Was Joe a part of that interview process? And then have you guys talked about how you're gonna work together and approach this thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know this is a new evolution for the league, as far as adding the general manager position. So to be honest with you, I don't want to get myself in trouble here. I don't know what I'm supposed to say or not say as far as, processes go. But obviously Joe was hired before I was hired. And when I came on, Joe was obviously already in place. Fortunately, he and I have known each other for a long time, obviously more competing against each other than we did with one another and getting to know each other. But, through that time, I had an opportunity to get to know Joe. I played for him in a couple All-Star games, got to know him through that, more on a personal level. And then, as I got older and retired from playing, out on the club circuit, I had a lot of interactions and really with Joey, I had an opportunity to work with the Team USA indoor guys. Joey was a part of that team, and, I had some interactions with Joe at those different events along the way. So he and I have always had a really good relationship. I think there's a lot of respect on both ends of that. And after coming on, to kind of answer your question there, we basically just hopped on the phone. We're both super excited for the opportunity, both super excited for each other. And, kind of fun to get with a guy that, honestly has had a ton of success. I mean, when you look at Joe, in his background, he had a lot of success as a coach. And I think I can learn a lot from him with his experiences there. So I'm really honored to have that opportunity. And now that he's taken on more of this GM role, he's been awesome. And, he and I catch up, every couple of days, and, we're already kicking the tires on the draft and ideas that we want to, kind of shoot for there. And we've been aligned on everything, so far. So I think it's just going to be a work in progress, him kind of getting to know me kind of getting to know him a little more. I think overall, I think it's going to be great for the guys. I think Joe.
Any concern, Train, that there's going to be too many Italians and/or Long Island natives on the roster? Has that been openly discussed?
Yeah, I think he's definitely rooted to the Long Island side of things. But I would say I'm kind of the outsider, right? Being the guy from Ohio, different perspective, Midwest guy. And I think there's. You see it now, Rat, down in Atlanta. I mean, there's a lot of guys that could play all over the country right now. And,
that's right.
It doesn't matter where you're from, man. I'm looking for for me, it's always been about just finding the right guys. I think there's a lot of great players out there. We all know that, right? Everybody who's at the pro level was, top of the game coming out of college, no matter what level they were at. And, it's about finding the right people, man. It's that Wimmer mentality that I'm going to bring into what we're doing here with the Redwoods.
Yep.
Did you already contact Matt Story to come in and talk to the boys coming down for training camp, or what's going on?
Yeah, I'd love to get Matty out. It's funny you say that because, I honestly want to try to strive to have somebody in every week to talk to the guys, when we go on the road. That's something I really want to do for these guys and bring in some important people in my life. And, even bigger than that, to be able to come in and share some knowledge.
So let's, before we, and I know we're going to jump more in on the Redwoods, but just to give some context to that, because most people probably have no fucking clue who Matt Story is or what the hell we're talking about. The connection with Anthony Kelly, Kyle, and I, beyond playing together and all that stuff, is we all play for a club team that plays out the Hawaii lacrosse tournament every year called Wimmer Lacrosse, and that team has been around for a long time, run by a guy named Matt Story. So I think Kyle and I's experience with you, again, I was your teammate on the Blaze, so I got to see a little bit of this there as well. You're a leader in that group. Obviously, it's a single tournament, but there's a huge culture aspect. Anybody that's been a part of it understands that. So I think when we ask you about that, and really one of the things that I wanted to hear from you on is your approach to culture. Like, I remember that as a teammate. You were obviously in the late part of your career, but you were such a force in our locker room, developing a culture, especially we were a new team. We hadn't won a lot. Your presence coming in really changed things. We've both seen it with the closeness of this group, that we only get together once a year, and you've really driven a great culture there. What's the approach with the Redwoods? What are the keys there that you're thinking about from a culture perspective and how you build this? Because frankly, Coach Kelly is, from the outside right now, it looks like it's not a great situation. I mean, before they hired you, we're talking about if you're power ranking the teams, they're probably at the bottom of the list here going into this season. So how do you come in and re-energize a group that's lost some guys to free agents and hasn't had the success that they wanted to have?
Yeah, I think, it's a great question. I think, and that's something I looked at, right, when I was coming in for the interview for the job, when I really dove into the stats and broke things down. And, to your point, Rat, I mean, we're bottom of pretty much every category, 7 or 8, across the board. The way I look at that is, I love being an underdog. Always been the underdog. I was drafted 174th out of 180 back in the expansion draft. A lot of people don't even realize that. And, I was just a guy that was given an opportunity. And, it's always been my mentality coming into anything. And right now I have this opportunity in front of me. And, what I want to teach the guys is, a lot of who you are and what you do on the field is just believing, believing in yourself, believing in each other, believing in the staff. And, I think we're going to do some things and bring some things to the table to really give guys an opportunity to believe in what we're doing. And, I think, it's always about things bigger than yourself, and I know when you get to this level, that's a hard thing to look past, where guys are so focused on, I have to perform, I have to put up points, I have to do this, I have to, make my sponsor happy, I have to do these things. And really, the best teams that I was on in my time, was when I was in LA and when I was in Denver. And, when I came into Denver, I got traded in the middle of the season, and I was on Ohio, where I live, was so excited with Hartzell. I couldn't have been happier to come back here. They traded for myself and Greg Bice as a package deal, brought me back to my hometown, and 5 games in, I got traded to Denver. And I was heartbroken. I'm back to traveling, back on the road. I'm flying out of my home city airport, and guys are landing to come to Ohio to play for my team. And, that stuck with me for about one day when I left the airport that day. And, I landed in Denver, and those guys welcomed me with open arms, and we won 7 straight games to go to they were, I don't think they'd won a game that year. Maybe they were 1-4 or something like that. And we won every game from that time forward to go to the semifinals. We had the biggest win in pro lacrosse history in the semis against Long Island to go to the championship, and it was the next day against Baltimore. We lost. Well, if you think back, that next year we came back with a vengeance. We went undefeated. We were the only team in pro lacrosse history who went undefeated, and then we lost in the semifinals to Charlotte. which is insane when you think about, because that year, if you look up that Denver team in 2013, I think it's the best team that's ever been put together. And if you look at it statistically, we broke so many records, and then we broke our own records against teams that we had already beaten previously. One of those teams was Charlotte, which is crazy. And this was a lesson I learned during that process. We beat Charlotte, set the league record, I think, for most goal differential. We beat them a second time. Same thing. We broke our own record. They came out firing, whacked us in the first round of the playoffs. We overlooked them, and it took us out. Fortunately, we were able to rebound and came back in 14, and we won the championship that year. But from the time I showed up, I think we went 20. It was like something like 28-2. But the two games that we lost were the most important ones, right? So a lot to be learned from that. But again, for me, it was just a cultural thing when I showed up on day one. I was who I was. I was going to be that guy. I was more motivated than I'd ever been when I showed up that first day in Denver. And, part of it is just, letting the guys believe and doing my part. And I think, again, going back to what I was saying about guys trying to get theirs all the time, you separate that, right? Focus on you and what your job is for the team. And if every guy can focus on their role and buy into what that role is, they're going to get theirs, right? Everybody's going to get their opportunity. Everybody's going to get more goals. Everybody's going to have more assists, and we're going to have a hell of a lot more fun because we're going to win games, And I think if guys understand that and really believe that, I think where we're going to end up when it comes to end of the season, I think the opportunity is endless there in front of us. And, I really believe that this group is young and hungry and fast and athletic. And, I think I couldn't be more excited to get back in there with these guys.
Yeah, and to kind of go touch back into the Redwoods train, do you think are there any areas in the particular roster that you have right now that require, some immediate attention in the draft? You guys have already made some moves in the draft, but is there an area you see that needs attention? Draft, you've made moves already, but
sure. Yeah. I think there's no secret. We have to score more goals. When you look at the numbers, I think the defense has done a good job to date. And I just think that the offense really needs to increase production. I think we're sitting at the bottom of assisted goals. We're just sitting at the bottom of just goals scored on the season. So, I think adding the guys that we picked up on attack, obviously losing Pennell was a big hole, especially on the points category. But picking up Nick Turn and Malloy, I think those guys could really add a new element down there, add a veteran presence, and really balance out our attack. And then I think the focus from here is going to be really just getting after the midfield, and finding some guys coming out of this draft that can help us on the offensive end.
And on that, I don't want to put you on the spot. Maybe you don't know the answer to this, but have you talked to I'm curious first with Nick Turn. So he has a huge rookie season, one of the best players in the league. Then the military service, that piece of it is always complicated. We've all played with those guys. Sometimes they're in, sometimes they're out. Do you know what his availability is going into this season? Is that something you guys have gotten clear on? And then I have a question about Malloy too, but maybe
sure.
Let's start there.
Yeah. Joe had the interaction with Nick Turn, there's a possibility of a little bit of conflict early, but I think he was optimistic that there might not be any conflict at all, which would be awesome. For me, obviously we'd love for a guy to be at everything. But when I was in LA, I played with a lot of guys that were, part of the Navy. We had a bunch of Navy guys back then that were stationed out in California. And I think there's positives and negatives, but I think when you look at that, those military guys are the best teammates. They're the toughest guys. They understand locker room culture. You're going to get the most out of those guys all the time. And I think in my mind, in my opinion, if a guy has to miss for a military duty, nobody blinks an eye at that, and nobody's going to miss a beat. So I don't think that there's any setback from a locker room culture when you miss a guy like that.
Yeah,
yep.
I think.
And then,
go ahead.
I
think it said Nick Turn, right? He was the rookie of the year, and then obviously the leader in points at West Point. But yeah, if he's back, right, that's a huge pickup. So that's exciting for you guys.
And then with Malloy, and it's kind of the same question. I assume again, it's roster. It's probably Spallina that's handling it. But you talked about a chip on your shoulder a little bit, coming in as the underdog. I mean, here's a guy who won the Tewaaraton, was a star, Then kind of when the PLL came, he got lost in the shuffle. He didn't come over. And now he's just, he'll come and he'll have a big game here or there, but he really hasn't like stuck on, a roster in terms of a starting lineup since the MLL days. But when you see it, you see him play, you see these flashes where it's like, oh yeah, that he was one of the best players in the world at one point. What are and again, maybe we're too early, but what are your expectations for him? And any thoughts on that pickup, and what that can do for you guys?
Yeah, like you said, the guy was, top of the game coming out of college. When you look at his numbers, he had 2 unbelievable MLL seasons. And to your point, the way I look at it is he hasn't had a great opportunity in the PLL. And maybe I'm wrong to say that. I don't know the full story. I'm looking at numbers, games played, things like that. It just doesn't strike me like he's had a great window to really shine. And I think, adding him in now where he's probably had some time to just mature as a human, develop, probably look back and whether it's missed opportunities that he never had or missed opportunities he didn't take advantage of. I think he is hungry and I think he's looking forward to an opportunity. I think at 29, 30, he's going to be an older guy that can come in. He has experience. I think he could teach a lot to the younger guys. And I think if we're getting a fired up, motivated, hungry Dylan Malloy, he could definitely do some damage in this league. And, I'm looking forward to seeing what he does at camp.
So a couple hard hitting questions for you here. First, are there any coaches in the PLL that you could not beat up? And if no, who would be the biggest challenger to that in that scenario? If you're in an NLL game, what's the one other coach that maybe can stand in there and go and drop the gloves with Coach Kelly?
Hey man, I wouldn't want to fight me, so bring it on. Whoever wants to step up to that challenge, I'm down.
I think Brian Holman, he'd be a dirty fighter, like really dirty.
To be eye gouging, fish hooking.
He would need to. He's up about 200 pounds probably. So going back just again, the culture piece, and I hear you talking about it with Malloy. I think one thing you do so well, and honestly, one thing I experienced and just felt like I saw throughout my playing career a lot was when guys get into situations where they're believed in and they're put in position to have success, they tend to do really well. And you see it year to year. Of course, there's like a core group of players that it doesn't really matter where you stick them. They're going to be top guys in the league. But on that kind of, if you look at like the PLL top 50 players, whatever, behind like number 8, there's a lot of change year to year in kind of who's really having great seasons. And I've always felt so much of that comes from confidence, belief in their coaching staff, being put in situations to have success. I hear you saying it with Malloy, and I think that'll be a real strength of yours. What I guess I'm curious about in terms of you as a head coach, I experienced Captain Anthony Kelly. And on top of just bringing a professionalism and kind of teaching us, I say us because I was one of the maybe younger leaders on that team in the Atlanta days, how to be a pro and how to show up prepared and do all those things. You also had a way of getting us together off the field and kind of doing the same thing there, in terms of like just teaching us how to make the most of our time together and also get into some trouble and some fun in the right ways. How do you change your approach to leadership from, so far in your pro career, you've always done it as a player? What's different about Anthony Kelly, the coach, compared to the captain?
Yeah, obviously there's a line to be drawn there between the way you act as a player and the way you do now as a coach. I think at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of similarities to that approach, right? So you have to make a connection to the guys. You have to find a way to get them to just buy in and believe to what's going on, right? And obviously a little different hat because I'm not out there on the field with my helmet on, grinding with those guys. But, now I'm grinding in a different category, right? So behind the scenes, bringing game plans to the table, watching film, helping in all those different areas and bringing that, my experiences that I've had as a player and now being able to translate it over to the coaching side and picking up little things to really help our locker room grow. And I've been doing it with with my club, with Resolute. I've been coaching these guys and coaching high level kids for a long time. And, obviously there's a massive difference between a high school kid and a professional. But I think at the end of the day, the great players want to continue to develop. They want to push themselves. They want to continue to learn. And really, I've always been a believer that guys want to be coached. I was always a guy that I never stopped learning. I picked up something or a million things every year that I played for different guys, whether I was being coached by guys or guys that was around on my team that were either coaches or just great players. And I think, I guess what I'm long way of saying it, try to take all that and put it together and bring it to the table for these guys.
So you've mentioned the Riptide, you've mentioned the Outlaws, you even mentioned your 18 days on the machine. You have not yet mentioned the Blaze as being a place of inspiration. I'm curious though.
Blaze was great. The Blaze was great, man. I loved it. I loved it.
Who were, if you look back over the course of your career, you played on great teams. For me, I think when I think of you and your career, I think of those Outlaws teams. They were so good. We already talked through it. But who's a guy, if you can point to one or two guys and say, like, those guys are Redwoods culture? Maybe they're not playing anymore, but these are the type of guys that I would, am going to push for to have in our locker room. Like, can you think of a couple guys that embody a lot of the stuff that you're trying to bring to the table here?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, a guy that, immediately comes to mind is, and I know Hartzell, him a lot better than Rat, but, Greg Bice, he's my business partner. We were college teammates. We played 10 years professionally together, all the way up until when I got traded from Ohio, where things separated. But, he's obviously a guy that I look at, and still today. I mean, we have our business together and, inspiring guy, great attitude. I think back to LA, we had just an awesome group. A couple names you guys probably wouldn't know, but a guy named JJ Morrissey, D Mitty, just an awesome guy, teammand blue collar.
Hughes was on that team, wasn't he?
Yeah, Brett Hughes. I mean, I could go on and on about that group. It was really special. And when that team, our organization basically folded, and I think we were going to come back and win it the next year. And but a couple more guys there. I know Hartzell. This one fires hearts up when I say what a great defenseman he was. He limited time in the league. He was a 37-year-old rookie, but his name is Sean Donnelly. And that's a guy. The reason he's so special to me is one, he was just an awesome teammate. He was this guy that, was so far removed from playing and just happened to live in California. And our GM knew who he was and brought him in. And he was the most lockdown defenseman you guys ever see. I'm telling you, you got to pull some film, game film. And anyone who knows Sean will know what I'm talking about. But
I think to get game film on the MLL, though, you've got to have a subscription to a now deceased streaming platform. And
that's fair.
If that's doable.
Somebody out there has some film that they gotta pull and share so that people know him. But anyways, I mean, he was just a guy, like, honestly, like, as I got older, right? I played when I played with you, Rat, in Atlanta. I was 37 years old. That was the last year I played. And I took a ton of inspiration from a guy like that when I was turning 33, 34, 35, and I was facing injuries and didn't think I could go on anymore. I would remember a guy like that was 37 and shutting down Ryan Powell, his MVP year. And those are people that inspired me. And, I always pulled from, and just things like that. I mean, Mike Watson was another guy that was just an absolute beauty. Just a guy that, I picked, we picked him up late in his career in LA. He was kind of like our veteran leader on that group. I could go on and on about guys.
That's good. It's good too, because it's a lot of things. Yeah, to your point, like, it's always good to bring up and give some shine to the guys that did it first, and those are guys that probably, you really had to be a true fan of pro lacrosse and been following the game a long time. But I think those names will spark some memories for a lot of people. So we do one thing kind of we've done it ourselves and with other people we've brought on, which is just to try to recall some of the absurdity of the MLL days. And you experienced that as much or more than anybody. I know Hartsey had one in particular story he wanted to pry into, but maybe before that, is there any travel day or scenario that you can remember from your playing career that stands out above all rest as being the most ridiculous? Because one thing people say, Trent, that you'll experience is the PLL is no different. You're going on tour, you're flying all the time, but somehow it just doesn't seem like the flights get canceled as much. Like it should, maybe they book earlier. It's just a more well-oiled machine, or it's just the juju. But like, it seems like the grittiness of the MLL travel has been lost a little bit. So we want to make sure people remember just how hard this was on a $6,000 paycheck for us back in the days.
So it was brutal, man. I could honestly somewhere, believe it or not, I have a notebook of all of the absolute chaos. I wrote it down. I started logging everything, not even travel, just everything related. I have it somewhere that I had aspirations to eventually write a book. So I got to dig that up and I can share some really good ones.
Or bury it.
Or bury it. Yeah. Right. Light it on fire. But man, dude, there's too many, man. There's too many from where one time we landed and they put us on a public bus. We took a public bus over to the facility. I mean, I can't even make that up. There was another one where I got injured one time. I'll never forget this. And I was actually in Maryland for work. It was when I was working for STX. Talked to my coach. He's like, "Okay, you good?" I said, "Yeah, man, I'll be good. I promise I'm good. Banged up, but I'll be fine." The GM canceled my flight because he decided that I wasn't going to be able to play. Nobody tells me anything. All of a sudden, I'm on my way to the airport. I go to check in for my flight, and my flight's gone. So I find out as I'm going to the airport that I just don't have a flight for that weekend. So obviously, I was not very happy. He called the GM, and we had some choice words. That might have been actually right before I got traded to Denver.
John Algie.
Oh yeah. So it was not a good ending there. God, man, I could go on and on. I mean, there was one actually, this didn't involve me, but you guys will appreciate it, where one of the other guys on the team was at the airport checking in. I forget where we were going, and one of the rookies was there at the computer. He's trying to check in, and he's watching him for a while, and then he walks over like, "Hey, dude, you all right?" And he's like, "No, man, I don't know what's going on. My flight, it's not letting me check in. And I got the email, but then I was saying I don't have a flight." He's like, "Dude, you better call so-and-so." So he called him up, and they released this kid. He had a flight that week. He got released. Nobody called him. Nobody told him. He's on his way to the airport.
That's like straight out of Hard Knocks, where they show up and their key card just doesn't work on the door anymore.
That's right. That's right. That was it.
Have the Southwest gate agent tell this kid he's been cut when he gets.
I can't even remember his name. No one ever heard from him again. I mean, that was it. So.
This reminds me a little bit of a story where there was somebody who showed up. I wish I could remember who this was now, to play a game for the Florida launch, and Casey Powell showed up without shoes and socks on, didn't have a stick. The game was in an hour. It was this kid's first ever game, and Casey was like, "Oh, can I borrow that?" And it was an orange head, and he was like, it was his backup stick or something, or maybe the kid wasn't playing. He was on not dressing, so he gave it to him. And Casey scored 5 goals that game, and that kid got cut. And then that season, Casey won MVP. It was when he won MVP when he was 38, using that same head. And I remember I can't remember who it was, told me the story. He's like, that was my only stick. I was I gave it to him, and he just scored all these goals, and I just never got it back.
Dude, that's unbelievable. I remember that season, because that was the year he was retired and then came back when Florida got a team. And actually, you guys will appreciate this. This was when McCardle was a rookie. He was down at the launch, and I remember I was on the field. I was playing defense, and Casey's coming around. And he was just on fire. Maybe he just didn't care, and that's why he was so good. He was just having the time of his life. And I remember he threw an around-the-world pass, and he hit McCardle square in the face. McCardle was cutting through the crease, not even looking, right, wide open. Bang, hits him in the face. 2 possessions later, same thing happens. He throws him a BTB, hits him in the face, and Casey's just losing his mind. Dude, you better be looking for the effing ball. If I got it in my stick, you better be looking for the ball. And now it's just funny. Look at the career McCardle's had since that time.
He figured it out.
Yeah.
And I vaguely remember seeing video photos of an Outlaws championship. You guys had rented a beach house or something. Is there any good, Outlaws banter you can give us, championship story you can give us that's safe for the kids?
See, I got to be careful now that I'm on the other side of the spectrum here. Now you're drawing this hard line for me as a coach and a player.
We don't get any preview of what the Redwoods championship celebration is going to look like.
I mean, listen, we had a lot of fun, and so Rock actually flew down for that. That was in Atlanta. That was down in Atlanta. We had a absolute weekend. Let's just say it was a long flight home. Barely made it. Good time, man, especially for a guy, I was 10 years into my career or so, to finally be able to hoist up the trophy. It meant a lot.
Who was the MVP of that night? Not the game, the post game.
Of that night, I would say, honestly, I would say it was Junior, John Grant Jr. He was having fun.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And he won so much, he got to do that every year. Or like every other weekend between the
no doubt.
Your series and the NLL and the outdoors. He's got a championship celebration once a quarter.
100%. He definitely has more wins in the big games than losses, man. So unbelievable guy.
Sure. Well, Hartsey, anything else before we let Coach Kelly go here?
No, man. You know how pumped we are for you, man. We're glad you could join us, and nothing but the best. We can't wait to watch you tear it up, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And like I said, if you guys ever on the road, man, love for you to come in and talk to the boys.
We'll be there Carolina weekend. Me and Coach, no, not Coach Ratliff, but me and Scott will be there.
Just corporate.
I'd love it.
Corporate.
Yeah, well, let's coordinate, man. I'd love for the guys to hear from you.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that Redwoods hat looks good on you, buddy. So best of luck, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, fellas. Thanks.
See you, Train.
Cheers.
See you.
Bye.
That's awesome. Getting him on, and man, he's you can tell how fired up he is. It's going to be. He's already got Redwoods gear. They already sent him a hat. I wonder if he had that before? If he was a secret Redwoods fan prior to that?
No, I doubt it. Just feels like a stretch, but I guess maybe you never know. So there's other PLL news, but what's? I mean, we talked a lot about what he brings to the table, and like. We were both so down on the Redwoods going into the season. And like, admittingly, I'm now kind of a little back. I just think he's just got the right demeanor to be a successful pro head coach. And in particular, to come into a situation like this and like pump some positive energy. I mean, he mentioned Bill Tierney, guy's a legend. This isn't really to throw shade at him, but like his energy coming in at this point of his career and life, coming into a championship team makes a little bit more sense. Like we've got some kind of, stoic coaches in the league now. And I think it's great, but like this Redwoods team needed some juice. And I just feel like he's the perfect guy to provide that juice. And like you heard him say it, chip on your shoulder. I've heard him say that so many times about how he, Ohio kid, not recruited, not drafted, he loves being an underdog. And here he is now taking over a roster that very much is going to be full of guys at this point. Rob's gone. I mean, full of guys who are more or less underdog stories. And man, there's talent everywhere in the league. So you get guys believing in themselves and playing with something to prove. Like you can turn things around quick. So excited to see. Anything else that he kind of brought forward that was that jumped out to you? Yeah,
I mean I think the Dylan Malloy thing is very interesting in how he described it. I actually didn't think of it the way he was describing it because I remember Malloy, obviously he gets on that Atlas team, but he was kind of like on the outside looking in every weekend, right? He was in and out of the lineup. He was coming out of the midfield, wasn't playing his natural position. And now, you look at that roster, if Nick Turn's there every week, he's probably going to be at X and Malloy on the right side. You got Garza on the other side, if Kavanaugh, whoever they pick up. I think this is a great position or spot for Dylan Malloy to be in because now he can step in and probably be a leader, and he's probably hungry to hey, I want to earn a fucking spot, and this is the team I'm going to do it for. So I'm actually really excited to see what happens with that.
He's such an interesting one because he was so good. Then when the PLL happened, he was just one of these holdout guys where he was for whatever reason, and shit, maybe we get him on here one day to ask him, but
I know
he just wasn't.
I know some stuff about that.
I know there was a lot of frustration with Paul and Mike and him, and he didn't come, right? He stayed with the MLL. And then I know the Twitter narrative is they blackballed him. I don't really, that's not true. When he came into the league, the coaches have anybody can pick him up and play him. But it is just kind of you don't play for a year, you kind of get forgotten. And then teams get righty attackmen. There's only 8 starting righty spots, in the league. And so it becomes very hard to break in. And I think part of his challenge has been he was on the Chrome, then he was on the Atlas, but he wasn't the starting righty attackman in either of those situations. And I know with his job, he also had a little bit of come in and come out of the lineup, which this was another subtlety that I picked up on with Train, but I don't think he likes that very much.
No.
You heard him say military, okay. But I think he's going to over-index on guys that are full-time lacrosse guys. He's that, right? He always has been, and he was the most committed guy, you could find as a player. So that would be my only question mark. Is Malloy far enough along in his career now where he has a little more autonomy and he can make everything? And if he can, there's no reason why he doesn't have a chance to be the starter back when we'll see there. And it would be very fun to see what he could do with, with an opportunity like that.
Yeah. So they got options now. They're making moves. I mean, they've been very active in the trades, and they obviously have two great draft picks now. So yeah, like we kind of bashed them a little bit, but I'm kind of like, we'll see what happens here. They got great head coach, and they're already making moves, and it's gonna be exciting to see who they pick up with those top picks that they have. So.
Yeah, it will be. So, okay. So other just news quickly, Jules Henenberg back to the Chaos. If we've been talking about him, I think it's worth mentioning. I know he was having some different conversations with other teams, just trying to find the best fit. Part of that's got to be getting to know Spencer and the new coaching staff, Coach Colsey there a little bit. So I'm sure he's had a chance to do that. And, I think the Chaos were in the Rob running a little bit as well. And I don't want, part of me wonders if that's a little bit of like dominoes falling. They don't get Rob. Maybe there's a little bit more cap space and a little bit more opportunity for Jules. I don't know, but maybe some speculation. So it'll be interesting to see how they continue to build. And then another name, and don't know that this is an announced piece of news yet, right, Hartsey, but like another rumor that's flying around is the short stick defensive midi Geddes from the Chaos going to the Outlaws potentially.
Yeah, that's what I hear. So that's what I hear. And then, man, you look at the Outlaws roster now, like Tarafanko, him. They've got one of the best D-midi stables in the league right now, and those two guys obviously need one more probably. But like, man, I don't know if Hawes is coming back. They got Hawes, Tarafanko, and now Geddes. Yeah. Dude, Geddes was an absolute problem.
Yeah,
he picks up the ball. He's so fast.
So fast.
So now you got Tarafanko, him, and Hawes. I don't think he announced his retirement, but if they got those three at D-midi, man, the Outlaws are going to be dangerous. They got great defense, like. The Pisano kid, that's his game transition. You give him two more D-middies, that could be a problem in transition.
Totally agree. They've done a really good job, and I've said it, and I'm going to keep saying it. Pseudo, that guy's been coaching pro lacrosse for a long time, knows how to win, knows how to build a team, knows how to build a culture. Those Rochester teams, they don't get the shine that like the Outlaws get, or like the late MLL machine who like went, won a championship and went to 2 or 3. The Outlaws obviously won a bunch of them. The Rattlers every year were right there. I mean, they were one of the best teams. They were right there every single year. And they had, of all the teams, they had one of the most distinct cultures and personalities, I think. And I just feel like we're starting to see him, he came in and he had to inherit a team. And he's been there a little while, but I really feel like his fingerprints are starting to get all over that roster and that culture. And like, you've got Bernhardt and Manley, you've clear veteran leadership. And then outside of that, it's like youth everywhere, like young, talented, exciting players. They're going to be knocking on the door this year, for sure. We talked about it with Train, but Nick Turn is the other one. I mean, rookie of the year. Yeah. Again, we covered it. The military guys, you never really know, but he was fantastic. Ex-attackman, in his rookie year, he misses the next season because of his military duty. Now it sounds like could be back, all the way back, mostly back. That's going to be a part of it. But like, we've seen guys, Jeremy Boltis, had some crazy seasons, after being out and then coming back into pro lacrosse. Garrett Thole was a top player, an all pro type player, while serving. Like, we've seen guys be successful in this situation. Kind of an under the radar couple moves there by the Woods, bringing Malloy and Nick Turn on. What are your thoughts?
Nick Turn, right? 40 points, 38 points his rookie year. He won rookie of the year. I think he was a first team all pro that year as well. Or it might've been second team, but I know he was an all pro that year, but he had his rookie debut. He was one of the best players that came out of the draft that year. Cause it was him, was Nauskas on the left side. And then you look at that roster, it's like, Sudan's like, is he going to play over what he has? And maybe not, probably not. So that's why the Redwoods probably saw that. And hey, kudos to Joe Spallina, probably noticing that and seeing that. Like, hey, we need an ex-attackman. Rob's gone, pick him up. They might get somebody in the draft, Kavanaugh, whoever they decide to pick up. But they've really solidified their roster with what they've already lost, right? They lose Rob Pinnell. Now you got an ex-attackman, Nick Turn. You got Malloy on the right side. You got Garnsey on the left side. And then they could get another great attackman depending on what they want to pick up in the draft. But I think one of their focuses needs to be probably the midfield. So we'll probably see that. But.
Yeah, but it gives them because we've been talking about an attack a lot, and you keep telling me that, you know, the Duke kid is there, and I'm like, he's not an attackman. We've had this conversation like a bunch of times. Now they have Malloy and Nick Turn.
Yeah.
So like, even if you get, and you have 2 picks in the top 5, so now you give yourself a lot of flexibility there to say like, well, maybe we still use one of them on attackman. There's not besides Kirst, there's not that clear ball carrying attackman.
Yeah.
But now if you get a Kavanaugh, you've got Garnsey, Malloy, Nick Turn, and Kavanaugh. You create a little competition. You got 4 good guys, and you can screw with that and figure out who slots in an attack and who goes up to midfield. And I think that frees you up now with your next pick to look midfield.
Yeah.
And to say like, now who's the best downhill dodger, you know, we can get, or whatever it is, and go that route. I mean, I'd be surprised to see them go D, even though more of the top end talent in the college draft is on defense. We've discussed it at length, but like, they, even with trading Owen Grant, there's still a lot of good pro D talent on that team. So I'd be very surprised if they did anything other than go, you know, 1 attackman, 1 midi with those.
And we didn't talk to Train, but I mean, clearly he's going to bring some of that sand from Honolulu and give it to Romar, and I think Romar's going to have one of his best years.
Exactly. You get he goes back to my belief thing. Like, you get guys playing with confidence, you know.
Yeah.
And we Hartsey, I mean, Romar's MVP of Japan, right? MVP or pseudo MVP of the Hawaii finals last October. Just watch out. He's hot. He's hot on foreign soil or island soil. Let's see if it carries over to the summer, and a familiar coach for him. So like, I think that's interesting to, you know, and Romar was also like on those Outlaws teams and did really well there. So like, those connections matter. Like you get, you know, guys together where there's familiarity. I think that's important. So anything else PLL related before we get into our college recap to wrap up?
Things are getting exciting in the PLL. Things are heating up. Rumors, players landing to spots. I mean, we're a month out, Scott, or a little bit over a month. Yeah. But May's going to be here before we know it. I cannot wait until.
This is how I could see these conversations going. I think there's going to be a turn to college like mid, you know, the 3 weeks in May, because we're both so pro PLL, but like when playoffs gets here for college lacrosse and those games are on ESPN, like there's going to be a lot to talk about. So it's going to be it's the best time of the year, because we might have to do 2 episodes a week. We're just going to have this rush of like awesome college lacrosse to cover, you know, draft, all that stuff. Yeah. And then as soon as that ends and, you know, we crown a champion, now we're week 1 of the PLL season and like we're off and running. So like the prime time for over the head content is on the horizon. It's like 75. My car is covered in pollen here in Atlanta. So spring has officially sprung, and that means we're getting close to summer lacrosse, which is awesome. So let's switch gears. Let's talk about college. Let me just rip through it and then we can jump around. So Duke on a little bit of a losing streak now. They get absolutely crushed by Notre Dame. Potentially Duke frauds, or mid, as the kids would say these days. Hopkins, mid. They're also on a 2-game losing streak. Michigan, low key hot right now. High key maybe. Michigan like doing pretty well. Kind of doing what Michigan is now, like becoming a thing for them, where they kind of seem to get hot at the right time of the season. So they look dangerous. A couple impressive wins. Kirst scores 20 points every week. Probably the most interesting game, Army-UNC. Army ends up beating UNC by 1 goal. I think that's back-to-back years now. They take UNC down by 1 goal. UNC, we hear from their alumni, they don't have a good win this season. Like again, Hopkins, but now Hopkins doesn't look very good. So we've been on it with them. Like, how good are they? It just continues to be frustrating, I think, if you're a fan or an alumni of UNC, because has there been progress this year? Sure. But you know, you don't win a game against Army, your first chance to really get a, you know, good. I mean, again, Hopkins, when it happened, was a good win, but another one and you fall short. It's just hard to feel confident picking them. Q beats Virginia in an ACC battle, a close game. I ripped through all that. What jumps out to you? What's the biggest story for you coming out of last weekend?
Yeah, I mean, the Duke, you know, the way they've lost those 2 games, it was by like 5. I think it was like 5 or 6 goals in both games. So that's a little concerning to me. The way the matter they lost those games. That Denver game is pretty cool. They got to come here to Texas. They played in Dallas, Duke versus Denver. So state of Texas got to see some high-end Division I lacrosse. But that's concerning, the way they've lost those games. But again, like John Danowski, can't count him out. But like that concerns me. And then the Hopkins. I can.
Yes, I can. Yes, you can. They're out. Yeah, they're not going to win shit this year.
Hopkins 2-game losing streak, right? Rutgers, Michigan. The Michigan team, though, that's a huge win when they beat Maryland. I think that gave them a shitload of confidence. They've done that before. But that's concerning.
What is it with them? Because I can't remember who they played week 1, but we were like, oh, Michigan's good. Like, maybe it was when they beat Marquette like 18-1 or whatever. But then they kind of like didn't look good. Yeah. And now all of a sudden, they're the only team that's taken down Maryland, and and now they come out and they go back to back on good wins. Very, very like Duke-like of them, where it's like all of a sudden the weather starts turning and Michigan starts playing. I mean, it is fucking cold in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So that literally that could be it.
Yeah.
They were just cold. Yeah. And now they're like doing okay. And all of a sudden they're good again.
Yeah, it's tough because, I mean, I think that was last year when they won the conference. The kid that scored the goal, he was like waving to the Hopkins sideline. They were talking trash, taunting them. That was tough. But man, they're getting hot right now, hot at the right moment. May's right around the corner, and yeah, I'm excited for that. But yeah, Kirst, you already touched on that. I think he had 5 points again. He's just, I don't see who else is even competing for the Torton at this point. I mean, he is just, he's insanely good, and he's going to be fun to watch on that Water Dogs team. But yeah,
Army, I still can't get over that the Water Dogs have the number 1 pick. Team goes to back-to-back championships, has like one of the most solidified rosters, and like weirdly lays an egg where they lose 8 games in overtime without winning a face-off, and then they get like one of the most generational talents we've seen in like a long time. Yeah, I guess you could say that last year with O'Neal, but to me, Kirst is different. Like he's not. I mean, O'Neal is a great player, maybe even more talented, but Kirst is like a culture changer, like a leader in ways that I don't know. I don't know if we've seen it from O'Neal yet.
Yeah.
Kirst comes in and it's like he's the main ball carrier. He's the guy you build around, and he's going to a team that already has Sowers and McCardle and Connor Kelly, like Hannah. Like they're going to be hard to stop on offense.
Yeah, and it's going to take a lot of pressure off Sowers too, right? He doesn't have to freaking carry the ball and dodge 600 times a game. You got Kirst. That's going to be an interesting. However, obviously, Coach Tierney's a great coach.
I really think that we could see Sowers. So my last season, whatever year that was, Sowers ran out of the box a lot. He would be at attack, but then like you'd have Graham Hossack on him or whatever, and they would run him up to the box, and then it made it hard for you if you wanted to pick your matchup for him. It made it hard for you to like get that matchup right, because you're having to like switch across the field in sub patterns, and like that's hard enough. And then he's very good down the alley. Yeah, he'll gets the ball to the box, he goes down the alley, and if he doesn't like anything, he goes to X and he hits the brakes, and now all of a sudden he's in like his. So we've seen so much success. The Archers have won 2 championships with Ament doing that. And I think when you have Hannah and Connor Kelly healthy, which like it didn't seem like they were really all healthy at the same time a lot last year. If you then run Sowers out of the box, it becomes, and you also have Kirst, down at attack now with McCardle, it becomes a very tricky equation to figure out where you put your short poles. And then even if you do keep your best close defenseman on Sowers, he's now up top, probably out of his comfort zone. Now all of a sudden, like Hannah and Kelly are dealing with short poles. Like that's one I would say, like, be on the lookout for that. I think we're going to see a lot of Sowers out of the box next year. And also maybe it keeps him from like running in front of the cage and getting smoked 5 times a season and missing games left and right. Like stay on the perimeter. Like
Q collar ain't working.
Seriously. And like, I don't, like we see this with NFL quarterbacks. I'm serious about this. Like, you don't see Mahomes or like Josh Allen or Lamar. You see them run when they need to run, but it's like more cautious. And then in the playoffs, all of a sudden, like Lamar runs the ball, 30 times in a game, and he's like lowering the shoulder, and Mahomes, same thing. Like you just like during the season, if I'm Tierney, like I'm teaching Sowers the same thing. Like, look, dude, I know this is one goal here, but like you can't like tone it back, but just play smart, like protect yourself a little bit. And then, when we're in the semifinal game, like fuck it, send it, dive and in front of the cage and do whatever it takes. But I don't know, maybe there's a little bit for him to learn from you don't want to learn from Lamar because he doesn't win in the playoffs. But in terms of the general approach to picking and choosing your times to like bury yourself in front of the cage and put yourself in harm's way, he could be more selective.
Yeah. So
Thoughts,
that, I mean,
response.
It'll be
Lamar.
That they have Lamar. I mean, you compare him to one of the best players in the PLL, so you're saying he's one of the best NFL quarterbacks. So we're good. But no, I think that's going to be problem. That's going to be a problem. If they do that too, they're going to have a lot of ways to do it. They can even Chris can come out of the midfield. You telling me that kid can't play midfield? Like,
yeah, true. That's true.
So,
no doubt. So now we're talking about PLL again. So the other game that I wanted to ask you about was Cuse Virginia. So like Cuse wins by 2. Okay, Virginia not great this season. Well documented. Spallina, doesn't have a very big game. I look at this and think Cuse. I think it's a really good win. Like, yes, Virginia's having a down season, but they're Virginia, and also it's conference. Like, look what happens to Maryland. They get in conference play against Michigan. Like, conference games are different. The opponents know each other so well. I think to go down to Virginia and win a game where Joey is quiet is a really good sign. I think English had like a big day for Syracuse. I think it's kind of ugly. You win a game with your defense. Like, I just continue to see things from them. Again, is it national championship good? I don't know if it's that good, but like they look like a true playoff team to me. They don't look like the team in the ACC that's going to fall off. I mean, I think you've got Notre Dame clearly ain't going anywhere, and I would almost pick any of the other ACC teams to fall off right now before I pick Cuse. I mean, I think that conference might go Notre Dame, Cuse, and then Duke, UNC, kind of battling it out right behind Cuse, and then Virginia bringing up the rear. What do you think? Are you in agreement of that, or you think just not that good of a win and I'm overreacting?
So are you saying Cuse is in fact back?
More back than Hop or UNC or anybody else in the back column. I'm not ready to give them the trophy yet, but I think that they're gonna be dangerous in May. Yes.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this, but their schedule, right? We talked. It started obviously with the Colgate game, and then going to Klockner, right there on the road. It's still like Virginia's not that great, but again, they don't just like blow. I mean, they still could probably are going to upset a team before the season's out. Like, they're a good team. That's a good win going to and away, traveling, going to Klockner. It's a tough place to play, and I think that's a good win, right? And then their remaining schedule, like week to week, we're going to see who shows up, right? I think you made a good point by Spallina, like not having 5 or 6 points, other guys stepping up. That's what they're going to need to do to win it.
Can we talk about that narrative too? Like, all the Spallina haters were basking in that.
Yeah.
Against ACC, against good teams, Spallina doesn't do anything. Just bad. It was a huge day for the haters, of which there are many, of Joey Spallina. I stand firmly. I think I was looking at the statistics. He's probably, unless something catastrophic happens, he's probably going to set the all-time points record at Syracuse. Yeah, and I don't care if you don't score a single goal.
What's the guy's name? What's the guy's name that has?
Yeah, Mikey Powell, who has that record, and like the list of guys behind him on that is insane.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And I just think if you are a high school coach, okay, sitting somewhere on your couch in Middle America, saying, I think Joey Spallina sucks, go look at yourself in the mirror. The guy is going to break Mikey Powell's all-time points record at Syracuse. I promise you, he doesn't suck.
Yeah,
I've never been more sure of anything in my life. But also educated people. I put some people on blast here that really know the game, that have that take. And I don't get anywhere in life, Kyle, hating.
I know.
I don't get it.
And I think like I didn't see that game. I watched highlights, but like, if I bet you if you watch the film, he doesn't have a big day on the points sheet, but like how many second assists did he have? How much attention was the defense when he was dodging and he moved the ball? Like, the ball got moved twice. Like, he just brings another dynamic game just because he doesn't have 6 points, because everybody's like, if he doesn't have 6 points, he sucks. It's like,
well, and that's me going back to people wanting him to be what he isn't, which is a dodging player.
Yeah,
like that's not what he is. He's a different type of player. He can dodge, and he draws the number one matchup, but really he's just kind of an opportunistic, really smart. He's physical where he needs to be. He's not, but he's also not just solely off ball. So he's not putting up points like a Cormier or like some inside guy. It's a different style of player. I think his dodging can continue to develop. Like, I'd love to see him Like he's got that where he gets to the island and throws it behind the back. Maybe my unsolicited 2 cents to him as somebody who played long stick midi, and I'm sure he is very interested in my 2 cents, is like developing a question mark like Rob, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, Rob wasn't a guy who like blows past people with speed. He uses like a lot of the same kind of skill set that Joey uses of just being strong and playing with his body and getting to areas. You know, that would be something he could add to his game to, I think, make him a bigger threat in the pro game. But, you know, I just, anyway, long way of saying I still think he's really good. And I think it's actually a really good sign for Syracuse because you're getting other guys, you're getting midfield production, and your defense, you know, shows up in, I don't remember the final score, but, you know, holds Virginia at home to 9 or something like that.
Yeah. 12-10. I think it was
12-10.
Yeah, 12-10.
Yeah. So, you know, I think there's things to like still going on in upstate.
Yeah. So it's
Central
New York? Yeah, it's
upstate.
Upstate. I don't know.
Is it upstate? How does that work?
It should be upstate. Yeah, it should be upstate.
Somebody write us. Let us know where.
Brian McGill, let us know. Okay.
Yeah, you show all those lines. Only other thing I've got is you know, we talked a little bit about, and this is going to go back to maybe a PLL college combo conversation, Hartsey, but you and I texting this week a little bit about the draft, and basically all signs point towards the Cannons taking Maxey, right, from Princeton. And I was in your inbox talking shit when Princeton was like in the first quarter losing to Dartmouth, and I was like, your King Maxey like is losing to Dartmouth, you know, and you've been pretty vocal about like you think that's a great pick for the Cannons. You like Princeton's offense, you know, he's a great player. I've been pretty vocal about like this isn't a hate on him. I think he's good for sure, but I just, in what I've seen of Princeton and of him, I have some questions about, is he a top 5 quality, you know, offensive talent? So make your argument for me on whether it's fit with that team or what is it like? What am I missing with Princeton? Like, I just don't see it with them right now, and him not really being the guy, the superstar guy that I think a lot of people, I don't know, I feel like his reputation is.
Yeah, I think a lot of these players, Mackesy, obviously Brennan O'Neill is another one, but like in their college, you know, in their college systems, right, when they get to the PL, a lot of these guys emerge as like, you know, and he's not going to be, when the Cannons pick him up, he's not the guy. You know, you got Jokic behind the cage. He's going to jar. Right. He's guarding, he's getting the number 1 cover. And then depending on what they do with him, right, they have Will Manny, lefty attackman, and then Mackesy as well. Like Coulter Mackesy, I just think he's just such a dynamic dodger, quick, shifty. You can put him on the left side. He's great off the ball. And that, I mean, offensive system that Coach Mitchell had. And then that was another thing, like his coach is going to be coaching him, but now that's not the case, and they haven't announced who is running that offense yet. But so that'll be interesting to see who they hire. But like I just think he's just, you know, he's great for that Cannon system. And like you said, every player doesn't mesh well, and depending on what team they go to. But I just think he's just too good of a player athletically. He can do a lot. He's just not like a one-trick pony. I think he's just going to be good in that offense with Marcus Holman, Asher Nolting, Will Manny, depending on what they do, if Manny's coming out of the box or whatever. But
so here's the argument for him, which you just made really well. Good fit in the offense. Also a guy who probably a full-time lacrosse guy, right? And you know, when you put whoever steps into that Cannons offense is stepping into a really good situation because you have playmakers all around you. So good lacrosse players that you won't have to be the ball carrying guy. Like I get all that. The lens that I'm putting him under, that I do with all offensive college players when they come into the PLL, is most likely you're going to come in and you're going to be asked to not do what you were just doing as like the number 1 guy on your offense at Princeton or wherever. We just saw it with Pat Cavanaugh. You're the number 1 attackman at Notre Dame. Now you come in and it's come out of the box and dodge on shorties. That's what I worry about with him. Is dodge on shorties. If all you're doing is moving around off ball and you're a mid-range shooter, you're an inside guy, like you just mentioned it, you have Will Manny there, who's one of the best at doing that all time. So you gotta beat him out somehow to get into that position at starting attack. More than likely, you're not gonna do that week 1 coming straight off your college season. So now you're at the midfield and you have a shorty because the pole is on Campbell. So you're now the guy who's the party starter dodging on shorties. He has not been the guy dodging on shorties like ever in his career there. And I just think that sometimes like you talk about like his dodging ability And maybe that's something to watch more closely. And maybe this really isn't just about him. It's about any offensive player coming into the league. Your ability to be dynamic, to play different positions. If you're not Kirst or Mike Sowers or Rob Pennell or somebody like that, you most likely are going to come in the league and play out of position, and you're most likely going to get shortied, which means you're going to be asked to be a Dodger. So if you don't have that skill set, sometimes guys can get lost in that shuffle, and it can become like really hard to. Now, maybe the Cannons are built in a way that that's not going to be the ask, because again, they know who they are, and they have Knowlton who's going to dodge, and Campbell who's dodging the pole regardless of who it is. Like, so if any situation is great, it could be that one. But those D middies, I mean, we just talked about it with Geddes, and I look at the Archers. I mean, obviously they're the team that's won it twice in a row now. Those D middies are absolute animals on the Archers. I mean, Pedersen, I mean, we saw him banging with Knowlton, and then obviously you got, you know, the other two. You have Latrell Harris, who's a freak, who's been there, and then the other two young guys, Piper Bond and Connor Marr or Mayer, right? Like it's a different game, and if you're not if you're coming in at that position and you're not winning that matchup, it gets dicey real quick. So that would be my concern, and maybe it's good coaching, putting guys in situations to have success. To your point, don't ask somebody to be who they're not. That's a skill set with him and with a lot of the offensive talent. Like, it's why I do think McAdory at Duke makes sense as a high pick. I don't think he's a starting ex-attackman in the PLL, but I do think you put him at midfield and he gets shortied. He can dodge up top. He can take guys behind. He can invert. Like, that to me is like a natural fit for him, where a lot of these other guys, you know, seeing them play out of position, I have question marks. But again, what do I know? I'm just a retired, washed up.
We shall see.
Long pole. So
I think they're all good points, right? I mean, we'll see what happens in the draft. I mean, and then they got, you know, their second round, fourth pick. You know, they might grab another midfielder there. Who knows what because they got another pole, so their defense is pretty shored up there. So we'll see what they do. But yeah.
Any concerns about Princeton? They close game with Dartmouth. Dartmouth, good, I think. Ranked? Dartmouth good?
I have no clue, Scott. I couldn't name one player. I can't name one player on the team.
It makes me happy to see Dartmouth doing well. Like, they've been kind of in the gutter of the Ivy League for a long time, and now like Penn is. I mean, Dartmouth might be Cornell, Princeton, Harvard. Dartmouth might be the fourth best team in the Ivy League this season, which is cool to see. They've done a good job up there of kind of turning things around. Just good uniforms, green. Nice to see a little green in the mix. Loyola now. I'm getting loopy. It's probably time for the episode to be over.
Have you got much sleep? Sky keeping you up all night?
I was like, no, different conversation. I was looking at my eyes while Coach Kelly was talking, and I was like, oh man, I need a nap.
You like sleeping? Oh man. Well, hey man, episode 10. That was a good one.
Yeah, great one. Thank you to Anthony Kelly.
Also, what did I have? I had something else. Oh no. How about state-run media mentioning us this week?
Oh,
how about that?
I do think we should ensure our listeners that we can't be bought. PLL's engaging with Over the Head, which is, you know, we're independent journalists, so we will take it. We will take the engagement. Right? I think we could use it, probably get some, you know, get that pigeon off your hat and put a sponsor on there at some point would be good for all of us.
Pigeon, but seagull, baby.
Oh yeah, sorry, seagull. The Salisbury Seagulls, not the pigeons. I forgot. Interesting. Thanks to the PLL media team, but you're not going to get anything from us. We will continue to come direct for you with all inquiries.
Episode 10.
That's all I got.
That is a wrap.
Peace.